Camera. No way.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cactus Lounge. I am Don. Wait a minute. We're going to just stop. Are we good, Phil?
I'm good. That was a joke. I'm sorry. I'm good.
I love the way it started. Okay, so I'm Donna. I traveled in 1976, and gosh, my name, I'm going to rename myself now. So we're really on the ball here. Um, you all know that already. And we're here in the Cactus Lounge, and I have two young men here today, young still to me, Caleb Reed and Phil Woods. And to be honest, I've been trying to get four of them together, but it was hard enough to get two of them who had the same schedule and could do this. So we're going to just go with this. So Phil, since you traveled much before Caleb did, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody um, when you first traveled, and then if you did staff or stayed on the road or what you did.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Phil Woods. I traveled B08 was my student semester, and I was on the road for 2 years. So after my student semester, I did staff um, for 3 semesters. So I was on the road for 2 years, 4 semesters, doing various roles.
And when you started in '08, they were already on the semester program as compared to a year, like when I traveled.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So at B08, so I traveled the second half of the year.
Okay. And what were the jobs that you did?
Yeah, I was really fortunate that I got to do different things. So I, after my student semester, I traveled for 3 more semesters, and I was on 3 different teams, a different role each year or each semester. So the first one I was business administrator, then I was band leader, and then I was education manager. So I was really lucky. I got to do a lot of different things up with people.
Diverse. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Caleb, when did you travel?
2013 cast A and B. And just we can do less of me because I've been interviewed before, just as a reminder.
Okay, there we go.
Please.
So for those of you who don't know, Caleb is my son. And part of the reason that I wanted to interview these guys is because, first of all, we don't have near as many people who traveled in the 2000s who have done this. We have way more of us who are older, the parents, the grandparents of the world who are retired or have more time. And these guys they both live in the Denver area and they are friends, but they did not travel together, right? So I'm going to ask you, Phil, how did you meet Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, living in Denver, there's a huge up with people community here, as we all know. When they moved from Tucson to Denver, a lot of the community was here. So I met Caleb at mutual parties. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, going to parties with other uppies and meeting this loud, talkative guy. And we realized we had a lot in common. That's how I met Caleb.
Okay, okay, which is I'm pretty sure is you like beer, right? Isn't
We,
that kind of
we
your
like beer. Yep.
I think the connection was really Paul Conzemius. I think that was the main like
that's
linchpin was the Conzemius center of gravity of
Right.
friendship.
It
And
was like,
Paul a little bit went, you guys are gonna like each other. And we went,
yeah,
okay.
it was like 6 degrees of separation, but just 1 degree of separation.
okay, makes total
Yeah.
sense. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So that being said, part of the reason that I thought it would be interesting to interview you guys is because Phil, you come from your father, I think, was the head of admissions when I was accepted. So Dale Penny was the final interviewer, and I think your dad was the head of admissions. And did your mom also travel in Up with People?
Yeah, my mom, Terry Woods, traveled for some time and was also in admissions and very involved. Yep.
Okay, okay, I should know that.
That's okay.
But okay. And Caleb, it feels weird to talk to him about me, but he knows that I
So
only
did your
travel.
mom traveling up with people?
Barely.
Yeah, one year, and then did costumes for a few years,
Right.
and so Phil, I'm gonna go back to you, and then I'll go to Caleb. And Caleb, if you're texting him in the middle of this, because I can just see you, you're gonna look at your phone, and you guys are
No, I got random text from a kid from high school who's gonna be in Denver. Going to
okay.
airplane mode. Sorry.
I was like, because I know how you guys are. be chatting.
We
So,
would.
so Phil, growing up, and in the Denver area, were you born here in Tucson? Was Up with People still here in Tucson when you were born?
Yeah, I was born in Tucson and then I moved to Denver, Broomfield when Up with People moved to Broomfield. At that time, my dad was still with the company. And so when Up with People moved, our whole family moved,
Okay,
along with a lot of my other childhood friends from Tucson who were also Up with People children. So
right.
yes, I was born in Tucson, moved to Denver when Up with People moved.
Okay, okay. And
For
did
94,
you?
94-ish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
93, 94.
Okay,
Right.
okay. Did you always think that you would travel and Up with People, or did you go through a time where I'm not going to do that? I'm sick of it. Like, tell me
Yeah.
about the evolution of that.
Yeah, no, it was the latter. It was always like my parents did it, so that's not for me. I'm an independent young person and my parents don't know what they're talking about. So no, growing up, I never thought I would do it. Well, maybe when I was really young, like I loved it, going
Mhm.
to the shows when I was a kid, and that was really fun. But as a teenager, you know how we all are, where I thought, no, it's not for me. Um, so no, I didn't think I would do it
Okay.
growing up, but yeah,
And how
We
long?
actually were just talking about that like the other day.
Really?
We were spending time together and I asked, I was like, was this something that you were always going to do? And we are like, no, neither of us were
right,
planning on it. We
right,
ended up doing it. And I think we both commented that in the back of our minds, it was always something that we did like, separate of being a judgy teenager or whatever.
yeah, I think that's true.
those
Yeah,
those songs. Did so how old were you when you traveled the first year?
I was older. I was 26
Oh,
when I started,
Me
which
too.
is older than most people because I did college and I had some other stuff and gap year. So I was older than most people in the
okay.
cast.
Wow. So yeah, as was Caleb. So Phil comes from parents who did they meet in Up with People? Did they know prior? Or
Yep.
did they meet and they met in
Yep.
Up with People? Okay.
Yeah.
And Caleb, tell them about your relationship to Up with People and how you felt about it in those like 18 to 25-year-old range there.
Yeah, I would say that before that, I was not an angsty teenager, and I've always been a theater kid who was pretty comfortable with like I was in gymnastics, which tends to be made fun of. There was lots of things that were not deemed socially cool that were always kind of my hobbies. So I don't think I ever had quite the I'm going to say it again, the angsty teenagerness that Phil probably had. That being said, I never wanted to do it. I never felt like I needed to. Through college, I was with someone, and after college, there was no like I'm going to leave my long-term girlfriend to go do this because she was not going to. So we had been together 4 years. I wasn't about to just like take off. It wasn't until later, frankly, until after we had split up, that I was like, oh, now is a good time in life to do this thing. I was kind of regrouping as I was 26 as well, Phil. So it was like I felt older than a lot of my castmates. Uh, and it doesn't matter now, but at the time that difference definitely felt noticeable of like, you're
Think about that.
18, you're just out of high school. I felt like I had noticeably more life experience, and whether or not that was true or not, that's how I felt.
So Phil, you also then did you meet your wife on the road and Up with People?
I did on staff. Yeah, we didn't travel together as important distinction. We didn't break any rules as students, but yeah, they're on as staff.
Do that, right? So in 08, in 9, in like
We met '09 when our first staff semester, and we were friends for the whole semester, and it was great. And then yeah, things developed from there. And then and the other challenge was she's Swedish, so we're from different countries. So after Up with People, we finished our Up with People time. We had to figure all that out. So um, yeah, I'm so grateful for Up with People for that and many other reasons.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Did at that time in 8 and 9, so were you Mexico City with like Paul Canzemius when like Leslie was, so you would have been there when I was there, because I was there in '09 as
Yeah,
one of many alumni. We went out to the pyramids and stuff
yeah,
like that. Huh,
yeah.
interesting.
That was my
Don't,
tour.
yeah,
Yeah,
I remember Leslie specifically because of being from Tucson and how crowded the bus was, and we were jammed in, the alumni were
yeah.
jammed in with the rest of the people on the bus, and the cast members were like squeezed down in the,
I mean, that was one thing that was so fun about it is there's such a Tucson presence and a Mexican presence. Like there's such a history and like foundation of Up with People is from Tucson and Mexico, Viva la Gente and all that. So it was so fun to travel and experience that.
yeah,
I don't know, foundation. It was fun.
that's neat.
I have to imagine Phil was not the energy that was going up to all the alumni though, and like hyper like, hey, are you Donna? Let's be friends.
No, I was
Knowing
really,
you as an adult, you were probably more calm.
yeah, that's true.
Being in Mexico, Phil does not remember that I was in Mexico. That's what we'll say.
Okay.
So Caleb, you got married in 23 and your wife did not travel enough with people. So I know some stories about you guys all getting together and some of the verbiage that comes up. So tell people what it was like or is like still for Jessica after all these years.
So there's the joking version and the serious version. The serious version is um at the beginning of our relationship, I happened to leave the country and Jessica moved to Denver, but she was moving here without any contacts. And so Leslie Kanzemius, née Kleiman, I reached out to her and a couple of my castmates in Denver and I said, hey, this girl that I'm no longer with technically is moving to Denver. Please kind of befriend her. And so she ended up living with a fellow uppie named Abby Alt, and she lived in their house, and Leslie invited her to parties, and some of my castmates invited her to parties. So the Up with People community actually welcomed her in just as a social thing, separate of being related to it. And then when I came back and we continued our relationship, it's been it's moderately challenging. Everyone's welcoming, everyone's nice, but she's kind of commented that it always feels like a high school reunion that you didn't go to the high school. And the more time we've spent together and the more time that Phil and I spend time rock climbing because we didn't travel together, we're not reminiscing the same way. Our friendships are based in this world that's current as opposed to in the past. A lot more. Not all the time. It's hard to escape that void and that pit of nostalgia. But
Yeah. I think
having the relationships that she's now a part of currently makes a difference. The one-on-ones, the social time that is just specific to a couple people creating new memories has really made it easier long term.
I think that that's true for all of us that travel. Whether our partners did it or not, but through the years, the relationships change a little bit. And what you have in common is that it happened, and then you create other common things. Like you mentioned the rock climbing, and that I made a joke about the video that I posted of you the other day with your nunchucks and stuff, and you were talking about your surgery and everything. And Phil, I don't know if he ever said this to you, but when he started rock climbing and I had visions of his body splitting open, I was like, no, don't do that. But I've done that with him most his life of all the stuff he does.
Yeah.
And he was like, if I'm ever gonna have abs again, I gotta do it. So
I
um,
don't.
but he doesn't.
There's
That's
not a lot of abs there.
that's because the beer is after that rock
Yeah,
climbing. That's my
exactly.
thought.
That's really why we go for the beer.
We're quite happy people.
But I think that for those who didn't travel, and for you, Caleb, your dad didn't. He never quite got it either. It took a lot for him to when we had the gathering at our house in Ohio when you were quite little and Grant was a senior in high school. But meeting people one-on-one or two-on-two and the couples that you guys have created relationships with, I still don't know if Jessica would ever want to go to the big galas or whatever that you do. I think she'd be much happier to just stay home and watch a show.
But also through the social life, Lika, who's an uppie that we met through a castmate of mine, was one of her bridesmaids. Like she went to a baseball game with three uppie gals this last week when I wasn't available. So it has branched out, but it's just not related.
Yeah, yeah,
It's unassociated to up with people for her.
right, right. So, Phil, do you speak Swedish at this point? Are your kids learning both languages?
Yes to both. Yeah, I lived in Sweden for 5 years, so it took me all 5 years, but I eventually learned Swedish. So I speak Swedish. The kids, my wife Sophie, speaks Swedish with the kids. So they speak it. They respond in English, but just out of stubbornness. But yeah, we're all at this point bilingual.
They
Yep.
did Swedish school for a long time, right? They were in like a
Yeah,
Swedish,
the
not
kids.
full school, but like an academy or something.
Here,
Yeah, in Denver, there's like a
Denver? Wow.
small Swedish community, and there's a Swedish school every other Sunday, which Sophie's on the board for. My wife Sophie is on the board for. So the kids go there. It's really just a good chance to have the community get together and keep the Swedish alive because such a small country that they need to do whatever they can to keep it going.
We
I was in
celebrate Midsummer and Eurovision every year.
Yeah.
there you go.
The two big holidays.
And Caleb and I have gone to IKEA and gotten meatballs on occasion.
Host rock climbing.
Yeah. So yeah, we do what we can to keep the Swedish tradition alive.
Do you get the licorice? I had a whole licorice
Yeah.
discussion yesterday with
Yeah.
someone. Yeah, they were,
Yes,
Love
absolutely.
it.
yeah,
Love
we were naming like what we like that's licorice. Did you like jelly beans? Do you like good and plenty? And then I brought up the salty Swedish things
Yeah.
that you
The
all,
best.
yeah, yeah. So, do you go back and forth, Phil? Do you go and spend a good amount
Yeah.
of time over in Sweden at this point, or?
Yeah, so we go every summer and Sophie and the kids go for longer. They go for like a month every year at least. And then also her parents come out at least once a year. So we really invest in and value keeping that going. And who knows, maybe sometime in the future we'll go back and live there. So yeah, it's very important to us to keep the Swedish going for all of us.
Mom is a fun anecdote. Sophie's from just Gothenburg. They lived in Gothenburg. Phil studied in Gothenburg.
You have to book it.
But if you don't know this, when I was in my second semester, Cast B that year, we did what we called a second semester retreat,
I
which was
remember
where that group of
retreat.
13 kids ours two staff members went and did a weekend getaway for like almost like a decompression with just that group of kids, students, adults, whatever. The house we stayed at was his wife Sophie's family home.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know that at the
We didn't even
time.
know each other at that point.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So
Yeah.
I've spent time at like I'll call it a cabin. It's not a cabin. It was big enough for 13 people, but home.
Got to be bigger than where Andreas lives then, because that's like a little box.
Yeah, well, yeah. My buddy Andreas in Norway, Phil,
Right.
his family, his aunt designs tiny homes.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So they were in her demo model, her first like tiny home,
Okay.
his whole life. So a family of four in like our living room or whatever.
All right, so Phil, I'm going to ask you something else that I guess you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but one of the things that I joked about, and because of Andreas, it made me think about this. When Caleb and Jessica had lived together for so many years before getting married, Andreas made some kind of a joke like, in Norway, you live together, you have 2 kids, 3 dogs, some skis, and whatever before you get married. It was super funny. And so did you and Sophie
Yeah.
get married right away? Did you get married in Sweden? Did you get married here? Or
Oh, it's the same in Sweden. Like it's not. Yeah, no, we didn't get married right away. And Sophie's aunt and uncle actually had grown-up kids. They were not married. They had grown-up kids, lived together their whole life,
right.
and they got married, surprise wedding, like when they were in their 50s. So it is very different culturally from Scandinavia to here. That people don't get married in the same way. So yeah, no, we didn't get married right away. We lived together for several years in Sweden, and got married here. We joke it was a green card marriage. Of course, that's not true, but we got married.
We haven't had a party yet. We got to do the party.
Yeah, we do. So we got married probably 5 years after being together. Yeah.
My cousin Hans, I don't know if Caleb has told you this, but we do have cousins in Gothenburg, Göteborg. And when we were there, it's been already 10 years. It was 2015. I said something to Hans about his wife, and he goes, "Wife?" I'm like, okay,
Right.
never mind. You've been,
Roommate.
yeah,
Roommate.
roomie.
Mutual acquaintance. And
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
kids. Right.
So going to some of the typical questions that I ask people when we do these interviews instead of this whole history piece. Tell Phil, was there a place that you traveled that you just would love to go back to again? And or a place that you went that you don't care if you ever go back?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I feel so fortunate to have traveled in like the Philippines, for example, places where people have a lot less than we do. And I'm sure a lot of us had this experience, right? But it was so impactful to me to see people can live happily, raise, raise families and have children with much less than we do. And also, it made me feel so fortunate to have what I have. I remember traveling in the Philippines at the end of my student tour. I was there for 4 or 5 weeks, and then coming back to the U.S. and having a warm shower. And
Oh,
remember the feeling of the warm shower. Like, wow, what an amazing feeling, and something I maybe took for granted my whole life. And that's just one small example, but I really found value in that, like traveling to places where people lived differently and had less than I had, and really readjusted my view on my own privilege. So yeah, that really stood out for me. Working in the Philippines, doing the community service in these basically slums, and people were happy there and lived well. And just that experience was really powerful and impactful to me. Place I don't want to go to again. Um, I
That's
don't know
kind
if,
of a weird question because the world
yeah,
is interesting.
right. The world is interesting. We're recording, but I don't know, the Midwest US, but it's like,
He's calling out Ohio
yeah,
specifically.
no, definitely Ohio.
hey, somebody's doing a book release in Ohio this summer, Phil. You might need to
I'm,
get there.
I'm not going to go. No way. Never again. No, I'm kidding.
I would
I
go to
don't
the
know.
amusement. We could go to
Everything.
Cedar Point there, Phil.
That's
That's
truly
what's
why all of
so
his cousins are coming. They honestly don't care if they're there for the family. They're.
no, but to answer seriously, like even places that you would think like, oh, boring. Like I'm from Denver. We did a tour in Greeley, which is an hour north of here, or a city in Greeley. We did a week in Greeley, and I was like, what am I going to get out of going to Greeley? It's an hour north of here. But I went there. I was in a host family who had very different upbringing, values maybe didn't quite align, but I got so much out of that, and it was a great experience. I'm sure we all had that. So
Yeah.
Man, you almost
no,
could have been hosted by your parents that close. That is close enough that it'd be like kind of a long drive, but doable.
right, exactly.
Like
And it's like,
interesting.
oh man, we're going to Greeley, but I went there and it was great. And that's just one of many examples where it's like expectations exceeded. You learn so much. We all know this. You learn so much staying with host families.
Caleb, do you remember, I think it was Thanksgiving when we drove to Uncle Dan's and we stopped at all the little towns in Kansas to see if there was something in the towns. There's like a whole little map, Phil, of like, if you take, is it 70 that goes,
It's the biggest yarn ball and then the biggest like it's a lot of that stuff.
but tiny little towns that have a thing to see, right? And we stopped at those things and took
Right.
pictures as you're going across, the, the state. Caleb, did I ask you that? Is there a place that you really want to go to that you haven't been to?
That I it,
Maybe you
is this
have,
in reference to my tour or just in general, like
just in
places I haven't
general.
been? I've never been to New Zealand, and do you know that they filmed Lord of the Rings there?
Never heard of Lord of the Rings. Is that a
It's a popular up and coming podcast.
uh,
No, yeah, New Zealand's top of the list for places I've never been. And then I would say Germany just because of Neuschwanstein, the castle.
Castles? At Rhine
Um,
River Cruise has a lot, yeah, there's a lot
yeah,
of.
I'm a castle person. I haven't been there. I've I've been to a lot of what would consider like big cities for me, like big places in my imagination. Rome is what's always a big one. I think Paris, London, a couple of those big cities. And I like Renaissancey stuff. I haven't been to Istanbul, and I'd like to do that. You know, major cities that were like kind of center of the world places. So Constantinople was a big deal.
Like New
Athens,
Zealand,
Athens. Yeah, it's the center of Middle Earth. It's all of Middle Earth.
I was like, so it makes me wonder, because so many people go there now, right? And Australia, but see, I can see Australia from Sydney and then going to the outback entirely different, but I wonder if Lord of the Rings had not been filmed in New Zealand,
It'd be very different.
would be people be going there?
And would they be happier without tourism? I don't know. Maybe.
Uh, Phil,
In Greeley, Colorado,
really Colorado, well, for us, it was Texas because I was the ending of the bicentennial and then we came back to Texas. I didn't think we were ever gonna leave Texas. Like, how
So
many?
you want to go back, you're done with Texas?
Yeah, yeah, and then my little brother was
Two of
like,
your brothers lived in Texas.
yeah, and then my brother said, "Oh, I'm going to the VA hospital in Kerrville." I was there. I should look up the address. You could drive by and see if those people still live there, kind of thing. Um, Food. Phil, you can go back to Scandinavia if you want, because they eat a lot of fish there and certain things, but is there a food someplace that you really, really learned to like that you never grew up with and you kind of were surprised?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of Scandinavian food and Swedish food. It's a lot of white, like bland fish and potatoes, and I had to deal with it while I lived there for 5 years. So no, yeah, I don't want to eat Swedish food. To answer your question about earlier, what I do I not want
We
to go
do
to
go to
the
IKEA.
yeah. Well, meatballs are good. I
Meatballs
don't
are
know.
good.
Food, I love Mexican food. I grew up in Tucson, like a lot of us, like an hour away from the border. I grew up to it. And so then traveling in Mexico, I just love this Mexican food. Um, I don't know. I like trying new things everywhere we traveled. I like to at least try it. So nothing comes to mind that I don't want to try again, except for Swedish food. They don't know how to cook.
Yeah.
But I concur on
What about
Mexican food though. As a picky person, I
yeah?
don't love trying food everywhere. And Mexico just has
They
I
got
said honestly, I was talking to Phil the other day. We were at a Mexican restaurant, and I commented that Mexico's great because a lot of their meals are deconstructed. So if you don't like something, you just don't have to put it on your plate. And for a picky person, that's awesome. And then all of the food I do like is wonderful. I mean, Italy is a beloved food culture as well. Like I was very happy in Italy. Um, yeah,
Okay, you're both beer drinkers. Um, is there,
Belgium.
okay, Belgium, is it because of dark beers in Belgium?
No, just oh, I should let you ask your question instead of talking over you. What's your
Belgium.
question?
So is there a country, like I could easily say, oh, I've been in France, I like French wines. Well, actually there was something in Spain I liked way better.
yeah.
So is there a beer or a style or a country that you liked best? Uh, their beers? Go,
For,
Caleb.
for me, honestly, I think I like I living in Colorado, we have a lot of craft breweries, so I like Colorado beers. But again, traveling, I just like to try different things and the local specialties. So yeah, Caleb, you mentioned Belgium. Yeah,
I
I'm gonna try Belgian beer. Wherever I go. Like I went to Japan last year. I like their Japanese like rice beers and stuff. They're not that strong or flavorful or interesting, but just that the fact that that's what they drink is really fun. So
I
that's a lame answer to your question, I know, but
It's great. Yeah.
so Belgium's great because of a couple breweries and stuff, but because they have a huge beer culture. But I'm a really big Hefeweizen drinker, and so Germany and the Weizens in general, the wits, very much hit a lot of what I like. So when I buy fancy beers at home, they tend to be German beers. It's Franziskaner and Weihenstephaner, and I'm probably saying those
They all
wrong,
sound
but
like people's names.
yeah, this is my friend Thomas Franziskaner.
and they're here to pump you up, Hans and Franz.
Hans and Franz.
So Phil, at the summer after up with people, I worked at a dune ranch in Jackson Hole,
Oh,
and
really?
I had never had beer, and they drank beer. It's when everybody else in the '70s was smoking pot, cowboys were still drinking beer, right? And
And you were sipping Diet Coke and water
no,
and
they
not
that was
not drinking or doing drugs?
no, it's when I drank beer and I played a silly game, and I don't, I haven't had two beers in 45 years to 50 years. I just,
You
yeah.
should. They're very good.
Or you guys always, Adam is always in a bar trying, try this cider thing, you know, this.
That's been a pretty cool advent in the US because cider has been frowned upon for years here. But like in the UK, that's not. A lot of other countries, cider is much more normalized.
Yeah.
So having cider become normalized has been very cool. Cider is delicious. Apple juice is delicious.
Yeah.
Apple juice is delicious.
Yeah.
Oh, it's even better. So yeah,
So
true.
before we get off here, Phil, you have brothers, sisters? I can't remember.
I'm an only child.
You're an only child, because so I
Yeah.
don't have to ask you if your siblings traveled. Okay, we'll skip that. We already know that Caleb's did not. Adam,
Can I tangent off that? I don't
yeah,
have brothers and sisters, but I grew up like I was born 3 months away from apart from Dave Penny. You know that maybe many of you know the Penny name.
yeah,
Uh, Dale and Mindy Penny were his parents. So I grew up from a very young age with the Pennies, the Shelstas, the Thompsons, the Earlys, like all these up with people families, right? And so I
yeah,
didn't have brothers or sisters, but I was very close friends with these kids. And then we all moved to Broomfield together when
yeah.
up with people moved. And so it really was impactful to me as a young age. And probably the reason I traveled. I know the reason I traveled is because Dave
Dave
Penny
did it.
did it.
Really?
Yeah.
So, God willing, we'll see, and the creek don't rise, which is a great saying. Dave and Paul
Well,
will
Demus,
follow
yeah.
up with this in another week.
Yeah.
I'll be able to get the two of them on here. Uh,
I want to go
and then
back.
I know that their siblings did travel, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I want to go. I want to go back to Phil's comment though. So
okay.
Phil, did all of your social group, that whole list of families, did it seem like all of your friends were always planning on traveling and you were the odd man out as like a youth?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so because all of us, our parents were so ingrained in up with people, the Lanes and the Pennies and Earlys and Thompsons were in it for many years. So we were just like we were hanging out together because of that, but we didn't.
You weren't talking about it, maybe.
I mean,
But
we're
Tim
talking
and Charlotte's kids did not. I remember being
right.
there with Ken, and Ken was like, "I'm not doing that. I feel like I already did it. I already lived it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
And so
don't."
honestly, I have Dave Penny to I credit to him that he traveled and I was like, well, if Dave can do it, because I always thought Dave was so cool and like the type of guy that would not travel enough with people. So if Dave could do it, I'll do it. And thanks to Dave, that was a good decision.
That's fun. Dale and Mindy are in Tucson now, so
Oh, they are, yeah,
yeah, I think they still are going back and forth, but I got
right.
a new place here recently. So, all right. We've only got a couple minutes, and I do want to end it, but I know that Up With People doesn't exist the way it did. We don't know if there will ever be another incarnation of it. Do either of you have a comment about that? And if you think that something is possible, or do you think it kind of ran its course?
I'll go first, Caleb.
Go. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
each got like a minute and a half. Go.
yeah, go.
I think both of those options are true. I think Up with People as it was has run its course. I don't think there's the market for it 100% casts on the road. It's just my opinion. However, I think there's certainly the mission and vision of Up with People is more relevant than ever. Just this last weekend, there was a big event in Denver. There was so Friday night I played bass with this big vocal voices rock event, and they brought in Up with People alumni and non-uppies into a room. There were like 200 of us, and it was fantastic. And the idea was just, bringing people together, celebrating community togetherness, and um, and that was so important given the current political climate.
Right.
So,
We need
given
that.
all that, I think it's more than ever. It's important. At the same time, we I personally saw for a long time that the business model of Up with People as it was probably not sustainable. So I'm not surprised or saddened that it ended the way it did. I'm so grateful that I had the experience, and I'm really excited to see what the future of Up with People can be in the new manifestation of its vision. Wow, that was very long.
I'm gonna addendum quickly. I
Quickly.
agree. It could be both things.
Yeah.
greater minds than me and bigger thinkers than me are the people that would have to figure it out. The people who can figure out how to get it funded and why it's popular. Because it was always a long shot anyways, and it
Yeah.
somehow worked in the first place. And that's bananas to me. So
My big thing is that since COVID, the staying in people's homes, which is such a huge part of our experience. I didn't know if that would happen. Okay, guys, thanks for all the text messages to figure out a time to do this. I was laughing hysterically this morning at the options and who's doing what and why we can't do this and yeah. So I appreciate it. Phil, thank you. I know that you may have been talked into this, goaded.
No, I'm happy to do it. Thank you, Donna.
I
we're
appreciate
good
it.
friends.
I know. And
Yeah.
you both behaved pretty well. So there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
We try
guys.
really hard to behave well.
I'm going to stop the recording.